The mountain monastery woke before the sun did. Mist moved low across the stone courtyards. Young monks rose in silence, robed. Among them was a boy named Arjun, earnest, quiet, the kind of student who wanted more than anything to be worthy of being there. On his third morning, he overslept. He arrived at meditation breathless, robe half-tied, 15 minutes behind every other student in the hall. The senior monk leading the session did not raise his voice. He did not even pause his teaching. He simply looked at Arjun, then looked away. That look would cost Arjun 10 years of his life. Arjun spent that entire day turning the look over in his mind, examining it from every angle, like a stone he couldn't put down.
Disappointment, that's what it was. I disappointed him.
He decided, somewhere between morning prayers and the evening meal, that he had failed, and that failure required something. Not punishment from outside. Punishment he gave to himself, because surely that was more honorable. Surely that proved he understood the weight of his mistake. The next morning, before training began, he walked into the garden and picked up a rough, fist-sized stone from beside the path. He carried it to the top of the hill behind the monastery. Then he carried it back down. Then he set it beside the garden path exactly where he'd found it, and went to meditation on time. He told no one why. He simply decided.
This is what I owe.
The stone never changed. Same size, same weight, same rough gray surface against his palm. But what it meant kept growing. In the first weeks, it was discipline. Proof that he took his training seriously. By the first year, it had become
I am the monk who never lets himself slip again.
By the fifth year, it had become something he no longer questioned at all. It was simply morning. Wake, walk, carry, return. Begin the day. Other students noticed his discipline long before they noticed the stone. They admired how early he rose, how steady his hands had become, how calm he seemed compared to the rest of them. They asked him for advice. They called him, eventually, the most disciplined monk in the monastery. None of them knew what he carried up that hill before the gates even opened. By the 10th year, Arjun was no longer a student. He taught the new arrivals himself. The same hall, the same dawn light, the same nervous faces he once wore. He had become calm, wise, the kind of teacher younger monks hoped to become. And every single morning, before any of them woke, he still climbed that hill with a stone in his hand. One morning, a young student, barely older than Arjun had been on that third day, spotted him on the path and called out, curious rather than concerned.
Teacher, what is that stone for?
Arjun opened his mouth to answer. Nothing came. He realized, standing there in the cold morning air, that he no longer actually knew. What Arjun didn't yet understand was that the question the boy had just asked him, the one he couldn't answer, was the exact same question a woman on the other side of the world would spend decades trying to answer about herself. That evening, Arjun walked to the old master's quarters. The same man who had given him that look 10 years earlier, now ancient, white-haired, his voice reduced to little more than breath. Arjun said, kneeling beside him.
Master, the stone I carry each morning up the hill and back, was it ever something you assigned me? Was it ever part of my training?
Stone? What stone?
Since my third day here, the morning I overslept.
The old man's brow furrowed, genuinely confused. The room held a long, heavy silence.
Arjun, I gave you no stone. I assigned no punishment. That morning, I was simply tired myself. My look meant nothing more than that.
The room held a long, heavy silence. Arjun felt the floor shift beneath him, though nothing in the room had moved.
You sentenced yourself, and you served that sentence faithfully for 10 years.
There was a woman who spent decades of her life punishing herself for a childhood she never chose, for poverty she didn't create, for a body she'd been taught to be ashamed of, for circumstances entirely outside a child's control. She built an extraordinary life on the outside, achieved more than most people dream of achieving. But underneath it, she was still climbing her own hill every morning, carrying weight nobody had actually placed on her shoulders, overperforming, overgiving, trying to settle a debt that no court had ever charged her with. It took her years, real years, hard years, sitting with the question before she understood what Arjun was only now beginning to understand. The sentence had never been real. She had written it herself, and she alone held the power to close the case. Oprah Winfrey calls that realization the most liberating moment of her life. Not the success, not the empire she built. The moment she finally understood she was allowed to put the stone down. Arjun didn't sleep that night. He walked instead, out past the sleeping dormitories, through the silent courtyard, into the garden where it had all begun. He found the stone exactly where he always left it, smooth now, worn pale at the center from 10 years of the same grip, the same hand, the same morning. He held it once more, turned it over in his palm, felt, for the last time, its familiar weight. Then he set it down beside the path, not on the hill, not carried anywhere, just set down, and walked back to his room. The next morning, for the first time in a decade, Arjun woke with empty hands. He didn't know what to do with the lightness at first. It felt strange, unearned, almost wrong. The way silence feels wrong after a sound you've heard every day for years suddenly stops. But it wasn't wrong. It was just finally free. Arjun misread a tired teacher's glance as judgment and built a 10-year prison from a single look that meant nothing at all. He called it discipline. Everyone around him called it admirable. But it was neither. It was a sentence he wrote, signed, and served entirely alone for a crime that had never actually been committed. The moment he finally asked the one person who could confirm or deny it, the entire structure he'd built his identity on came apart in a single sentence. I gave you no stone. What set him free wasn't punishment ending. It was truth arriving. The heaviest burdens are rarely the ones other people hand us. They are the ones we pick up ourselves, quietly, reasonably, almost without noticing, and then carry for so long that we forget to ask whether they were ever ours to carry in the first place. A glance becomes a verdict. A mistake becomes a life sentence. A moment becomes a decade. And somewhere in all of that carrying, we stop asking the only question that actually matters. What stone are you still carrying and that nobody actually gave you? Somewhere right now you already know its name. The guilt that drives you harder than any instruction ever did. The shame you've been quietly serving time for. The thing you decided years ago that you owed and never once went back to check whether the debt was real. In the tech industry, we often mistake anxiety for ambition. You don't need a 10-year sentence of burnout to master machine learning or land an AI job. You just need to drop the imaginary judgment holding you back. Now that your mind is clear, it's time to take real strategic action. For example, prepare a learning plan for yourself with step-by-step AI skills you actually need to learn this year and drop the rest. Full learning path in PDF file is in the description. 5 roles, step by step. Please refer to it, it will be useful. And if you know someone who has been climbing the same hill every morning for reasons they can no longer explain, send them this today. Got other questions? Drop them in the comments. I'll answer what I can. Sometimes the only thing standing between someone and the rest of their life is one honest sentence, spoken by someone who finally asks the right question. What stone are you still carrying that nobody actually gave you?